This video contains spoilers for the original Life is Strange, but none for any of the subsequent games. It also contains some mild spoilers for Gone Home. Life is Strange ends with a final choice. Save the girl or save the town. One life or possibly thousands. It seems like the correct choice is obvious, one the game is telegraphing you to choose over and over. Even the girl whose life is on the line seems to think so.
There's so many more people in Arcadia Bay who should live. Way more than me.
When I first reached the end, I chose to save the town. Sure, the girl in question might be your best friend / romantic partner, but we're talking about thousands of lives being lost. The moral decision was clear to me, which is why I was surprised to see a large majority of the game's fanbase overwhelmingly choose to sacrifice the town and save the girl. In fact, many will die on the hill that this is the only correct choice, which seemed absurd to me at the time. It took a while before I realized I was wrong. Because Life is Strange's final choice isn't about morality or thematic closure. Life is Strange's final choice is about queerness. Life is Strange is a graphic adventure game from 2015 about a young photography student named Max Caulfield who finds out she has the power to reverse time. It first happens when she witnesses the death of her best friend Chloe and rewinds to save her. Well, ex-best friend to be more accurate. Max moved away years earlier and lost contact with Chloe, and through the course of the game, the two reconnect. It's also a very queer game. Chloe is likely bisexual or recently discovered she's lesbian. She has condoms in her wallet and mentions a boy phase, but was pretty clearly in love with a girl named Rachel before she mysteriously disappeared, and shows obvious signs of interest in Max throughout the game.
I dare you to kiss me. What? I double dare you. Kiss me now.
People argue more about Max, with some seeing her more like a blank slate protagonist who doesn't have any defined sexuality so that the player can choose it for her, something not uncommon in games centered around player choice. This is something I would strongly push back against though. Max Caulfield is not a blank slate. There is explicit evidence in the game, like her journals and reactions, that show she has interest in men and women. She also has the bisexual haircut. Both characters' designs are clearly inspired by Blue is the Warmest Color, a queer graphic novel and later a queer film that hasn't aged very well, but a queer film regardless. Also, this game just feels bisexual. I don't know if I can define exactly what a bisexual game is in words, but this is what it looks like. It might seem unnecessary to labor over this. For many, it's obvious. For others, it doesn't matter what the sexuality of the characters are. You'll often hear something along the lines of, "I don't care if the character is gay or not, I only care if they're well written," as if somehow a character's sexual orientation being instrumental to their story is bad writing. But recognizing the queer narrative in a work does matter. It matters a lot when queer erasure is still so prevalent. Earlier this year, IGN published an exposé about the dysfunctional work environment of Deck 9, the current developers of the Life is Strange series, and the tense relationship with its publisher, Square Enix. It's largely centered around the development of Life is Strange True Colors, the latest entry, which includes multiple queer characters, something it was highly celebrated for on release. However, and of course there's a however, there's a catch. One of the developers stated that all the stuff people have praised in the queer community about True Colors was hard fought for. That almost feels like an understatement given what the rest of the article reveals. The team constantly received pushback against their efforts to include queer and diverse characters, and were even confronted with Nazi imagery put into the game's files on multiple occasions. Another developer said they were instructed to not say anything about Alex's sexuality, period, at all. IGN's article states that Square Enix directly told developers it didn't want Life is Strange to be thought of as the gay game. If even the studio in charge of what many would consider some of the best representation in a mainstream game series was rife with people trying to scrub it of its queerness, it becomes clear just how important it is to recognize and examine the depictions we do get. The final decision in the original Life is Strange is choosing whether to save Chloe or the entire town of Arcadia Bay. Ultimately, it invokes a pervasive trope in media commonly referred to as bury your gays. In a great deal of fiction, the death of queer characters is inevitable, and any queer romances are doomed from the start because of this. To the game's credit, yes, it isn't an inescapable outcome. You do have a choice to prevent this, but the options are not weighted equally. Even stripping aside the morality of one life against thousands, the ending where you let Chloe die is conclusive, tying up many of the game's plot points and themes in a satisfying way. It feels like the intended ending. The cutscene that plays after you save Chloe is extremely short and underdeveloped, nothing more than a few shots of the two driving through the wreckage of the town. While the Arcadia Bay ending cutscene is nearly 8 minutes long, the Chloe ending is about 2 minutes. The only ending where Max actually shares a kiss with Chloe is the ending where she sacrifices her. The most overt romantic display between the two only happens in the option where Chloe dies. Life is Strange really wants you to bury your gay. In the book Queer Game Studies, there's an essay by Merritt Kopis sharing her personal experience playing the game Gone Home. The essay is aptly titled On Gone Home. Released in 2013, Gone Home is a first-person exploration game where you play as Katie, a student who returns from a trip studying abroad to her family's new house, looking for clues left behind by her younger sister Sam that explain why everybody is mysteriously missing. It has a lot in common with Life is Strange. It's set in the Pacific Northwest and is all about observing and interacting with the environment around you. The heart of the story is the romance between two girls who became friends in school and realized they loved each other as they spent more time together. The games even share the motif of the girls being pirates. Merritt, like most players of the game, spent the whole time looking for what went wrong, how this house became empty, and the story of the inevitable doomed queer romance between Sam and the girl she fell in love with. Upon entering the bathroom, she's filled with dread as she notices the tub stained with blood splatters. But it isn't actually blood at all. It's hair dye.
Dyeing hair is weirdly intimate. I don't know if I've touched someone else's scalp before. It's pretty intimate, right? It felt intimate.
As Merritt points out, you realize that this isn't a game that's interested in evoking the limited range of emotions most video games are content to deal with, and that maybe it's even playing with your game's literacy, which is a polite way of saying your internalization of the awful tropes that have come to dominate our understandings of what video games are supposed to do. Merritt ends her essay on an optimistic note, writing, "Obviously, we can't go back home, into our pasts and change things. Like Katie, all we can do is observe, witness, turn things over in our heads until they make a kind of sense that we can work with. But we can write new stories, ones where girls in love don't die tragic deaths, and where the big empty houses are scary but ultimately safe, and where you can have a teenage girl romance at 25 or 35 or whenever you want to." Life is Strange is a little different. It does rely on some of those awful tropes, as Merritt puts it, that Gone Home purposely and refreshingly avoids. But unlike Katie, who can only observe, Max, via us, the players, can make choices. She can go into the past and change things. She can take a story where girls in love die tragic deaths and fix that. She's given the power to do so. We are given the power to do so. And why wouldn't we? We don't play video games in a vacuum. We bring in our experiences, and many people brought in their experiences and knowledge of centuries of queer erasure and countless examples of buried gays. Saving Arcadia Bay and letting Chloe die may be the most narratively satisfying, the most morally correct ending, but it isn't the most personally satisfying ending, the most identity-validating ending. Saving Chloe is an act of rebellion against an industry, a culture, or in this case, a literal universe that wants to erase queer relationships at every turn. In my second playthrough of the game, I saved Chloe because I don't want to be erased anymore.